Okay, hello everyone. Hi, I'm Mike Gelson, founder of voicelessons.com. With me, I have Dr. Matt Edwards. Matt, welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So, sorry guys, we had a last minute question come in. But we've got some really good questions from you. So, if you do have a question, drop it in while we're going, or you can always contact us throughout the week as we compile the show. So, today's questions. Let's jump into question number one. All right, here we go. So, question number one. This is a good one for all of you out there. It's summer, drinking a lot of water. So this one comes in from Linda. She writes in, please, sir, you suggest we drink half our body's weight. I am 72 kilograms, meaning I'm supposed to be drinking 36 liters. So I just wondered, could you help us clear this up and go?
Yeah,
Let's go through the
absolutely.
math calculations.
Well, part of the question got cut off too because it was like, can you explain how? And no, you can't drink 36 liters a day. So Linda, thanks for asking this. I forget we have an international audience. And so, yeah, pounds and kilograms end up calculating out differently. So I had to look this up. And I don't know. I'd have to go back and try to figure out the formula. I did some, math, Google math. But so what I did is I went in, Linda, and I looked up 72 kilograms, and that came up to 158. And so I rounded that up to 160 just for easy math. And so half of 160 in ounces, so half of 160 pounds in ounces per day is what you would be drinking. And so what I found is that for 72 kilograms, the amount of water you would want to drink each day is 2.3 liters. So that is way, 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 way less than 36 liters. And, I do think it's important, since Linda brought this up, you can overdo it with water. So, we'll get a singer who's, in a bind, and they think, well, I should try to drink like 2 gallons today. That's a bad idea. You can actually, there are athletes that have ended up in the hospital swelling up, like their heart or other lung issues because their bodies had way too much water in it and they couldn't clear it out. So don't do that either. We're just going for moderation. That's an estimation of, about how much you should drink throughout the day. And remember, the easiest way to tell if you're hydrated or not is if you're urinating and it's clear. If it's like bright orange, bright yellow, and then you're dehydrated, as it starts to get more pale and clear, then that's a good indication that you are hydrated enough. And what you're going to notice too, if you haven't been staying hydrated with water, you're going to not only notice changes in your voice. They're not going to happen overnight, but usually within about 3 days, you start noticing that it's just a little bit easier to sing. And over the course of the next week, they continue to get easier, where your voice just feels like it's moving better. But it's also not uncommon for people to feel like they've got more energy and just to overall feel better about everything. And part of the reason that is the brain, it's a huge percentage of water that's necessary to maintain healthy brain function and a healthy function of the rest of your organs. So if you're dehydrated, your body's not working optimally. And once you are hydrated well, then your body is, got everything it needs, and you're going to feel better and you're going to sing better too. And, the one tip I've got is, to find something like, I like to use one of these bottles. It's a double insulated steel bottle, so I can keep ice cold water in there, because that's what motivates me to drink water. If water's lukewarm, I don't do well with it. And I also cannot stand the taste of chlorine. So if I feel like I'm drinking out of a swimming pool, I can't handle that. So, I make sure that I filter my own water and then carry it with me all day. But I can easily drink through the 4 or 5 of these that I need to stay hydrated with no problem, because it's cold. It's easy to carry around with me. And, so I'd recommend finding yourself a good insulated bottle to keep with you, and it should make it a lot easier.
Awesome. Okay, that's great advice. And you can see I've got my double insulated Yeti here,
Nice.
drinking your water. So, Linda, great question. And hopefully that's helpful for everyone out there too. Let's jump into our next question. This question comes in from Louisa. For male voices, teaching the head voice, or some call it male cover, for a legit sound. So I think this was, how do you?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's what I took away from it too. So let's first of all just even talk about this terminology, because Louisa points out something good, that some people call it one thing, some call it another. Now we see this in all singing styles, and at the end of the day, terminology isn't as important as getting the result that you want. However, in the classical world, this specific result that Louisa is pointing out is kind of codified. We know that it's lowering some of your formant frequencies to line up with different harmonics, which is getting real complicated in acoustics. But when you do that, you get this warmth that goes into the upper part of your voice. So in all reality, what singers are trying to do is match up the timbre of the bottom notes with the timbre of the top notes when they're doing this cover. So let me just show you what would happen if I don't try to warm up the timbre. Let's say I just take a speech-like quality on the bottom, and I take that up. And it starts to get into more of that yelly, shouty place. Now, the reason that's happening is that if we don't try to do anything with our larynx, it's going to naturally rise as the pitch rises. And at a certain point in time, as it rises, those vocal folds are coming more firmly closed together, and you're just going to run out of space to adapt. And because you didn't change your vowel shape, it's going to actually start creating these anti-resonances, right? It's like antimatter. But there are these little, parts in your vocal tract that cancel out frequencies you want to be there. And so there's two parts to this, really. It's doing what needs to be done at the vocal fold level, but also doing what needs to be done in what's called the vocal tract, which is everything from the vocal folds to the opening of the lips, so that you can modify and you can have that warm tone on the bottom, but then as you go up, maintain that. So we're not going but we're getting that warmth. So we can get it to blend all the way through. And then when you're training to be a professional classical singer or opera singer or legit musical theater singer, you're learning how to do that up on this E, F, and G. I taught about 5 hours a day. I'm not going to try to do it tonight. But, you want to usually do that same kind of covering thing just on the upper part of the range. So some people mention that it's a head register or a head voice. Well, the reason they call it head voice is because a lot of singers perceive more vibrations in their skull when they make the sound than rather maybe in their chest. But that's a perceptual thing that varies person to person. So that's why I don't usually go for, calling that the head voice. There is more of a, flow quality to it. You're bringing in some falsetto-like qualities to go over that hump at the vocal fold level. So what I mean is falsetto up here is that breathy sound. And if I don't make a change, I get the yelly sound. So I have to split the difference. And find that balancy place where I get a little bit of the bright, a little bit of the right? And we call that magic spot chiaro scuro. Not too bright, not too warm. So that's what has to happen at the vocal fold level. So now to teach that, I like to use exercises like what I just did, where you start off with the breathy sound and you, crescendo that or grow that into a full voice sound, and then you go back. Because once the vocal folds master that skill, you can then stop somewhere along the way and find your individual sweet spot. So you're going to want to start people on the lower end of their voice, that and then take it backwards. And then after you master that on low pitches, take it upwards. That's going to give you your vocal fold component. To get your students ready for how to use it, you're going to have them start doing that fading sensation as they go up the range. So instead of going up at the full volume, which is getting into yell quality, we're going to lighten up. And then grow back down. You want to start off really lightening up, kind of what I'm doing there. Make sure your body really knows it can transition. Then you're going to start saying things to your student like, maybe not go so light, and just see what they give you. Cool. What happens if you give it 10% more buzz on the top? Let's say that fits what you're trying to do. You're going to say, great. That's where we need to be in terms of registration at that vocal fold level. Then the next thing we need to do is to start to play around with those vowels. And so what we know in general is that when your larynx rises, it runs the first formant, which is largely responsible for timbre. It's going to make it go higher, which is going to make your voice brighter. So we want to try to make sure that our larynx stays in more of a neutral resting position. So if you do a glide, you're going to feel that it'll start low, and then it'll try to go up. We're going to sip in a string of spaghetti and go, and we're going to try to maintain that lower feeling as we go up. That's going to add a lot of that warmth that we're going to need for this covering idea. We're training in that moment and teaching our body how to lower the first formant. First formant is largely responsible for timbre. The lower the first formant, the more of that cover we're going to have. And the reason your students are struggling with this is as they go up and that larynx raises up, it raises that first formant, which makes it have a brighter timbre. Okay? So we're trying to just maintain neutral, not depressed. Oh, that's fake. We're just trying to maintain as relatively close to neutral as possible. Oh. Then we can play around with the front lips. If we have this neutral, but we have spread lips, I'm not going to have that same cover. So the next thing I need to do is start to bring the vowel quality warmer. And we make the vowel quality warmer by rounding those lips towards an O shape. So that that's where we want to go. I'm turning this mic down a little bit. But again, that's Then as we start to get above that place and we float it first, we can then intensify it. And we can find what level of intensity we want inside of that cover. Pitch by pitch, we just keep working that one up. We'll see if the F's going to be there today. I don't know what that is. Yeah. Teaching 5-6 hours in a mask all day today, I learned, is extremely fatiguing. We're back in person at my school, and yeah, it is. It's drying to try to teach singing all day. But that's the gist of it. I get the idea of it. Again, when you're taking voice lessons with anybody, it's not about how they sing. It's about how you sing. So again, I've got a heavy voice. I've got a lot of warmth to my voice. I am not looking for that same warmth in like a 17-year-old student, right? I'm not even probably looking for that in a 28-year-old student because their body's different. So you're going to let every individual kind of reveal what theirs is. And that's why I think this process works well. If we're working with getting those vocal folds to find variation, and we're getting the lips used to rounding towards O on the front and getting the larynx so we understand how it moves, then we can start to nurse that vowel to what we want. So if we feel like it needs to be darker for an effect, we could say, go ahead and keep more sipping spaghetti in it. So instead of just, we could say, get it really low. And get that extra depth if that's what we wanted. If we heard that and we're like, whoa, that's way too woofy, we could say, don't sip so hard. So then we can find a more neutral place. So you can shift the amount of sip and the effort. Another thing you can do to get that larynx to drop is to suck against your finger and then keep doing this. All right, we call that a resistance breath. I learned this from Dr. Brian Gill, who's voice teacher at Indiana University. He uses this resistance breath to help make sure that you're getting a good inhalation and filling up your respiratory system, but it also helps that larynx drop as well. The suction helps it drop. And so if you get that lower laryngeal position that way, try singing from that. And then again with the lips, you can round them more towards oo or spread them and open them more towards ah. Anywhere in the middle, that's going to give you that other place. So we're playing with the two formants that are really responsible for this cover, formant 1 and formant 2. Formant 1 is formed behind the hump of the tongue. That's how low your larynx is, how your soft palate's up. And formant 2 is what happens in front of the hump of the tongue, and that has a lot to do with jaw opening and lip rounding as well. And in order for that to work, you just got to make sure that the vocal folds have the ability to thin out and then to re-intensify as needed. So you're sending the right information through the filter so that filter 1 and filter 2 can do their job. And on the outside, we can get that nice covered sound that you're talking about. So that is a complex explanation of it, but I can tell you it gets even more complex than that. One of the easier ways to kind of simplify this is the way that Ken Bozeman does it. And Ken Bozeman will talk about the over vowel and the under vowel. So if I want that to be a little bit warmer, I might want to think of having more on the underside of the vowel. So I have in the back and in the front. La Calunia. You can give me that and the front and the in the back. Now let's say we want a little bit more warmth to it. I could get more in the front with that in the back. La Calunia Enfantine. And we can get that combination, right? So we're playing around with those vowels. If I thought Enfanti is too woofy, I could say put more of that brighter on that upper vowel and less of the on the bottom. So we get a little bit more on venti in the back with a brighter in the front. Enfanti cello. And then we can brighten that up, or we could put more and o. Enfanti cello. And we can make all those variations that we want. So that's why I like that system of simplification of undervowel and overvowel and kind of playing with that. Because essentially you're also controlling formant 1 and formant 2. You're just doing it in a more indirect way. And then those sliding exercises, gliding from breathy to full and full to breathy, or full to breathy and breathy to full, those are the secret sauce and make every style of singing better, because you're coordinating the muscles at the laryngeal level that are responsible for altering the vibrational pattern of your vocal folds. And that's the gold.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for the very detailed breakdown on that. Luisa, I hope that's helpful for, how you can go about teaching that with your male voices there. Great question. And Jeff, I just want to say hi. Thanks for joining us today. Let's go on to our next question. This one comes in from Vivian. And it's a great question. You sign up, you get some lessons, or you've been studying for a while. How do you know if your voice lessons are working?
Good. You should be improving and getting better at the things that you want to do. Okay. Now it seems pretty simplistic. We're going to put a little bit more complex answers into it. But Vivian, at the most basic level, you should be improving for the things that you want to do. Now, that doesn't mean that you reached unrealistic expectations. So let's say, Vivian, you're 14 years old and you come in and you say that you want to sing like Ariana Grande with all of her high riffs and all of that power. At your age, that's not going to just happen overnight. So a reasonable timeline for that is, first of all, getting closer to 18 years old. Ariana's older if you're, 14, 15. So maybe about 5 years, but that's because of your age. Now, let's say if you're 18 already, well, your voice has changed, but you don't have the experience that Ariana does. You're not going to get that experience to make her sounds in 3 months. You might start making some of her sounds that aren't extreme in 4 to 6 months. In general, most skills of the voice, they're motor skills, and we start seeing improvements sometimes as early as 2 to 4 weeks, but usually in 6 to 8 weeks if the exercises are actually, targeted at what we want to accomplish. So let's say that you have a really breathy voice and you want to be able to get a more speech-like tone like Ariana has. 3 to 4 months, that's pretty reasonable. If you're not getting that clear speech-like tone in 4 months in a limited range of an octave, I'm starting to wonder what's going on. And either is there a vocal health issue here, or the exercises you're getting aren't working, right? But once we establish speech, well, then we got to start to establish the belt voice. Again, 3-4 months, I expect to see some changes for most people. Now, changes don't mean they can sing every note they want. Changes mean the highest note they had is getting easier, and we're starting to get the voice to reveal what other high notes might be there. How does it reveal that? Well, let's say if the E was tough, all of a sudden the E becomes real easy, and the F starts showing up, and the F sharp starts showing up, and the G starts showing up, and the A flat starts showing up without you thinking much about it. But no matter what you do, that A doesn't want to show up yet. And you try all the tricks in the book with your teacher and that A still doesn't show up yet. That's just where you are. That could be the limit of what we would call your physiological max. That's just how you're designed. Could be your age. Couldn't just be you're still new to singing. And at 8 months, I don't expect you to have the full range you're going to have for the rest of your life. You're still coordinating things. So that's time just to kind of wait and hang out. 2, 3 years later down the road, we should have a better idea. If that A is still not showing up, but everything else sounds amazing, then that's physiological max. If the A shows up sometimes, doesn't show up other times, shows up sometimes, you do a master class, it comes out great. And then you have another discovery and it comes out great. And then your teacher makes an adjustment and it doesn't work again, then something's not clicking right. And that is a kind of moment to really be talking with your teacher and saying, but when I do this, it works. You asked me to do this and it doesn't. I'm confused. And really start to question, because sometimes that's where I run into seeing students that are stuck and it might be time to look for somebody else to help, is that on their own, they're discovering breakthroughs. But then if they take their teacher's approach to doing it, the breakthrough disappears. So ideally, your voice teacher, your vocal coach, is really open-minded. And so when they come to you and say, hey, I learned this from blank, that your teacher goes, cool, show it to me. And then you show it to them and they go, nice, I see why they may have done that. Or that's a different sound. I wouldn't have gone for that, but I'm glad you're able to make that. Let's go ahead and practice that in case someone else asks for it as well. Right? Because we as the teachers are not the full audience. We're not the million people that you want to get following you on Instagram. We as the teachers are not the casting directors who sit behind tables in the Broadway musical theater world. We as the voice teachers are not the college faculty who make the admissions decisions. We're one person with one opinion in a subjective art form where everybody disagrees about, various artists. It's really hard to find one artist that everybody universally loves, right? So it's expecting that different people are going to have different tonal goals. And if your tonal goal is different than mine as a teacher, it's my job to help you get your tonal goal and let mine go. I've had students that I think sing their belts a little too bright and harsh, but they like it. And if they're getting signed and getting contracts, I'm in, right? It's something that is an acceptable way to sing. I think a different way might sound nicer in their voice, but that's my opinion. It's not my voice. It's not my life. It's not my art. So when they say, but Matt, I really like this, I go, cool, then let's do that. And I'm on board with it, because if it's committed, if it's connected, it's still great. My personal preference, like I like Pepsi Max over Coke Zero, shouldn't rule and dictate what everybody has to drink at the party, right? I should try to get some other flavors for my guests who may not like it. And so that's the way that I approach it with my singers. If you're not getting that kind of respect for your own goals and for your own needs and your own wants, then that's a sign that maybe your voice lessons aren't working anymore. And that maybe you need to find somebody who is going to want to work with you kind of as a guide, right? There's this old mentality, unfortunately, that still holds true in some voice teaching circles, that the teacher is the master and the student is the apprentice and the teacher has all the answers. And that's just not true anymore. There's too many styles of singing, too many subgenres. There's too many people out there doing great work to say that any one person, including me, has all the answers. Now, there's a lot of us out there who have learned how to guide singers towards the answers. We know a lot. And we also can say, I would start over there and then try to find out more from this person, because we know that person has more answers than we do. And that's the kind of teacher ultimately that you want. The teacher who says, like today, I had a student bring something up about their voice, and it had to do with the feminine and masculine qualities and how to go. And as I'm listening to the student try to explain this to me, I'm thinking I might phone a friend, because I think there might be somebody that's going to help this student put better language to what they're trying to say that they want than they're capable of doing right now. And I think if I can connect them with that person, it might be really good for them. It doesn't weaken me as a teacher. It just means that I know another expert who might be better at explaining what the student's asking about and might be better at teaching that. So that's the other thing that you want from your voice lessons, is a teacher who's going to be honest and open with you. If you have all that stuff, then they're working. But if you're not seeing those results, if you've been in voice lessons for 4 months and nothing's changing, then the technique that you're trying to approach with, or the exercises you're doing, probably aren't working, unless you're just not practicing at all. And if you're not practicing at all, then my next question is why? And then that's what I need to hear from you. If your reason is, well, I just can't find the time, then you can't blame the teacher on that. That's you not committing to doing this thing, the work that you want. If the answer is, I don't know how to practice, then you need to go tell your teacher that and ask for help. If they say, well, you just go practice and they won't teach that to you, that's a problem. My guess is they'll give you some advice on how to practice. If you stick to that and you're still not seeing progress, then that's, a sign that, those exercises don't work when I am doing the work. And, those conversations are tough. But what I always say is, before you get to the point where you just leave a teacher, just start asking more questions. Right? Writing things down and saying, okay, so when I was practicing the other day, I tried to do the thing you told me with my jaw, and I'm not sure I got it right. So I video recorded it to show you, and then show it to them and let them see, because then they could be like, oh yeah, that's not what I meant. Or yeah, that is what I meant. Why isn't that working? And then you can solve it together. If they're rejecting that kind of questioning, or those video excerpts that are meant to help you get more from your lessons, I'd look for a different teacher, because that's not an equal working relationship, right? You want somebody who's open, who's saying, yeah, let me hear that little video. Okay, cool. Now, don't expect you to text them all throughout the week, sending them videos and get feedback, because they just can't handle that. But taking the video and then bringing it to your lesson, I find that extremely helpful. And a lot of times I realize, yeah, you don't understand this concept that I just tried to share with you, so let me reshare it. And then we'll get you to the place that you need to go. Okay? So Vivian, I hope that gives you some strategy, some things to think about, and good luck, right? I've had many teachers in my life. I've learned a lot from all of them, but none of them had every answer to everything I needed, right? So that's why I'm a big advocate on you also are going to have to reach out and learn from a lot of different people to find all the answers that you need.
Awesome. Great input there, Vivian. We hope that helps you. Let's jump into our next question. It comes in from Ronald. He writes in, do you have suggestions for coping with criticism? Wow.
Yeah, this is a hard one for a lot of students.
Yeah.
So everybody has an opinion, right? You got to remember that on everything, and especially in an internet age. And if you're talking about criticism coming through the internet, I wouldn't take it too seriously. There are people that seem to really enjoy being nasty to other people online. There's some sort of sociopaths, psychopaths, and they and get their enjoyment from trolling people online. So ignore that nonsense. If you know that the person likes you and the person cares about you, or the person is another artist or somebody you respect and look up to in some way, even some small way at all, and they give you some criticism, like, I thought that your voice sounded a little off tonight, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. That means that they care about you enough to just offer something because they know you're trying hard to do things, and they just think that it may be helpful. Now, the sad thing is a lot of people in our society don't know how to offer helpful criticism, right? So they'll just walk up and go, your voice sounded tired tonight. And then they just kind of leave it there. Whereas the better thing would be like, how'd you feel about your gig? And they're like, oh, great. It was a lot of fun. And you're like, yeah, that crowd was huge. They were so loud. I know I felt like I was screaming. Did your voice feel okay? I don't know. Because I kind of wondered at one point. It almost sounded like you were getting tired. Did it? Yeah, I kind of felt that I was getting tired. Yeah, I know. That's rough. But what I find is that when the crowd's up there, I start to over-sing. So maybe it was just the crowd getting you hyped up. Right. And so you're just kind of offering it through a conversational point of view and sharing your own experiences and, sharing information that might support them emotionally in that moment. They could feel like it was kind of off. You're just going, yeah, I can understand why you felt that way, and then offering a reason that maybe it was like that and offering a suggestion that you've learned from your own. That's helpful. Just walking up to somebody saying, your voice is real nasal. That's not helpful. And then you got to sit back and listen to it and go, well, do you like your voice? Maybe you like the nasality. There's some emo bands that I'll help students with their music, no problem. When I listen to it, I think they're singing through their nose and it drives me personally nuts. I admire their production artistry, their songwriting, whatever, but listening to some of these hypernasal voices, I can't do it. It's just not for me. Now, if that person comes to my studio, I'm going to help them. If that's what they want to do, I will help them sing with that nasal quality, right? But, if they heard that, well, I heard my voice is nasal from the last voice teacher, and I disagree. Well, if you say, well, what do you want to sound like? And they show me some other examples with similar voices, and that's what they sound like, I would agree with them. That wasn't useful criticism, because that's literally the sound that you want, right? So you have to judge the lens through which the person is offering that criticism. If you have somebody whose lens is as they're mainly the drummer, and they're like, your vocals could need more grit. They're a drummer. What do they know about voice? Unless they actually have some voice experience. You could just say, yeah, okay, I could see that you would like more grit in that song. Thank you. Just file it away in your brain as something that you heard that one person kind of liked. Now, if it's a record producer who walks up to you and says, I really like that song, but to me it needs a little more grit, that guy actually produces records and might have a chance to help make your record better. I would listen to him a little bit and think to yourself, what happens if I can go experiment with that grit? Do I like it or not? And just go test it out. And with anything that you're offered, try it, see if you like it. And if you don't, just file it away. then the way that you're going to know when you need to take something serious is if it keeps coming up. So if you get that comment about that song needing grit like 4 times, you probably really need to start figuring out why everybody hears grit in that song and you're not putting it in and you're not sure that you do. And I'm not saying that you have to change everything. You get that many people telling you something, you might want to start to think about it. If you have a bunch of people saying, man, you're a great singer, loosen up a little bit. Or man, you're a great singer, but you don't know how to perform. Or man, you're a great singer, but you look nervous. Don't take that as the end of the world, because that's what most people do. That's called magnifying. It's a cognitive distortion. You take one small sliver of information, you blow it up to be something even bigger than it was actually meant to be. And as you magnify it in your own mind over and over again, this little teeny speck of a criticism becomes this huge mountain that you can't get around. And so you have to keep reminding yourself that when that's getting magnified, that's a cognitive distortion. What's an alternative way to approach this? The alternative way to look at this is a lot of people told you sounded great, the songs were good, the band did well, but you could loosen up. That doesn't mean you're terrible. That doesn't mean your performance was a dud. That means they see so many good things happening that they think if you made one little adjustment, it would get even better. That's simple. That's a real easy little speck of criticism to take. So make sure that you don't magnify it and take it out of the bounds of, what would be their original intent. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Jeff, you're an exception. Jeff Costello, who's a drummer, he actually knows what he's talking about with the voice. And like I said, Phil Collins has, I'm sure, great things to say about what he does. So again, if you have a drummer who does sing, go for it. My brother, love him to death, does not sing, and he plays drums for a band. Don't listen to my brother about your vocals. But, if he wants to hook you up on the drums, he's got a lot to offer. The general feel of the music, he's got a lot to offer. But don't let somebody who doesn't really know you and know the voice ruin your day or dictate the way that you sing. Take the feedback in, digest it a little bit, see what you can do with it. Don't make it the end of the world. And, keep seeking out info from people who you admire, who you respect, who are doing the kind of things that you want to do.
Awesome. Ronald, I hope that is helpful for you. And just remember, you can't please everybody in this art form. So grow and learn, and then if it hurts, just move on. So let's go to our last question for tonight. This comes in from Mark. Will I ever get over my stage fright? And I just wanted to, maybe there was a bad experience you had, Mark. So I'd love to hear more about the story. But yeah, Matt, what do you have on how do you handle this?
Well, I saw a few more things on there, and that, it was one of those longer questions. We couldn't post the whole thing. He said, still new to performing, and started taking it up during COVID and hasn't really gone out and performed in public much. Went to an open mic night and felt so shy. Tried to go do it again and still just felt like really different than just sitting at home in front of a camera. And so what I would say, Mark, is that this is a normal experience. And I think a lot of people are going to feel this after in this post-COVID world, where you have been able to just put yourself out there online. You didn't see immediate reactions from people, so you could just do whatever you wanted to do. So the number one thing I'm going to tell you is to try for the first, while as you go perform, let the audience be the spectator, right? So we can do what's called breaking the fourth wall in performance. You have a wall on the side on your stage, a wall on the back on your stage, this wall on the side. And then technically there's a wall right here on the other side of this camera. And by me talking into the camera and right at you, we would call that breaking the fourth wall. Now, if Mike and I were just having a conversation like this and I was on camera and I'm just getting a side view, I'm not breaking the fourth wall. I'm just having this conversation. You don't feel that connection. So when you're up performing for the first time, you don't necessarily need to get up there and try to connect with your audience. You can find a space in the lights, live in your own song and play, and just let them be like voyeurs who are looking in on you, recalling this experience or this situation or this emotion that this song is about. That is one completely viable way of taking in a performance. If we go to, like a singer-songwriter showcase, they're usually not raucous events. Everybody's just kind of there. The songwriter's up there bearing their soul and telling their stories, and they're just living in their world as we look in on them. That's different than if you're like rocking out, headbanging with the band, singing with the audience in the front row, talking to them, shaking hands or whatever, crowd surfing. That's a different experience, right? So if you're doing open mics, don't feel like that's what you got to do. Just go and be there. When you're just there doing the things that you're doing, what I want you to do next is focus 100% on the story you have to tell. You only get nervous when you're worried about what other people are thinking. And if you're worried about what other people are thinking, then you're not thinking about the story that you're telling, and you're not going to tell a good story because you can't tell a good story while thinking about what people think. Okay? So I want you to focus 100% on telling the story of the song, or setting the mood of the song, or living in the emotion of the song, and just let the audience look in. It's not going to happen perfectly the first time you do it, so you're going to have to keep going to these open mic nights. You might want to try karaoke, because karaoke, the audience is even a little bit more disconnected. An open mic night, they're all listening. But at karaoke, half are listening, half are just drinking. So if you're old enough to do that, try one of those. And think about the story, perform the story, let the story sit, and then let it go and walk away from the stage. Analyze what you set out to do that day. If your only goal was to feel more comfortable telling the story, that's the only thing you can judge. Did you feel more comfortable communicating the story? You may say, well, I did. I felt a lot better, but my high note, nah. Now you're starting to stretch. This was only performance number 3. Performance number 3's goal was to feel better telling the story. Now, if you felt like you accomplished that this time, then on performance number 4, let's get the high note right. So then on performance number 4, maybe you nail the high note and you're like, but I wasn't into the story at that moment. That wasn't the point. The only point that time was to nail the high note. So let's make performance number 5 about staying in the story and hitting the high note. Let's say then you finally hit it and you feel good about the song and you get the reaction you wanted. Now you've been successful. The key is you didn't give in to the stage fright. You didn't magnify the situation. You let it evolve, right? And we see these performers on The Voice, on American Idol. We think they just came out of nowhere. Most of the time, that's not true. Most of the time, they've been working, doing other things all along for years, and then TV makes it seem like all of a sudden they came out of nowhere, okay? You're going to get those stories in your head. Push them aside. That's not the truth. Most people have performed thousands of performances before they really start taking off. So you just took 5 to get one song feeling good. Now pick a different song. You're going to have to go through the same process. And as you keep just focusing on accomplishing one thing and putting the story first and foremost, you should start to notice that you don't care as much about all of their varied opinions. You got to remember, a third of that audience ain't going to like you. That's just statistics. A third of the audience is going to be like, yeah, this guy's pretty good, or I like this, or this is nice. And then you might find 15% are like, that was really cool. And then 15% are like, I love that. Well, then it's all you need to please. And I'll tell you this, that if that 15% is actually more like 1%, that's enough. There's 350 million people in this country. 1% of that's 3.5 million followers. Can you imagine if you had 3.5 million followers? Right? So if you walk into every room and perform and just focus on getting one person in that room to like you, after 1,000 performances, you have 1,000 followers. If you're always then putting music out online and they're sharing it with their friends, or their friends see it scrolling through their feed, you're going to pick up more followers. Okay? It's a snowball process. Don't try to rush it. Snowballs start with a small little snowball, and then you start rolling it. And as you roll it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you have the pieces that are big enough to build an epic snowman. Your career is the same way. On the stage fright thing, tackle one little thing, story. Then add another little thing. Add another thing, layer until the song's good. Pick a new song, do the same thing. It's going to take you a lot of time to do it. But as you do, the stage fright's going to go away. You're going to be a better storyteller. Your voice is going to start to free up because you're not so freaked out about the way that you sound. And I think you're going to find the success that you've been looking for.
Awesome. Great advice there. I love the analogy with the snowman, even though it's summertime.
Yeah.
Everybody, let's go build snowmen this week. So, super helpful, Mark. I hope that helps you and everybody else out there. Let me check the chat if we have any questions. Jeff, we have Jeff the drummer. Jeff, thanks for dropping in today. Matt, any final thoughts for this week?
Stay safe, keep your masks on. I said I'm back to teaching in person. It's been interesting. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Over here, vaccinated, teaching in masks with 2 air filters in the room, and a 600 square foot air filter in front of the singer, a 600 square foot air filter on my piano. My office is like 250 feet square foot. And then they tell me the system is circulating 3 times an hour. I reached out to a laryngologist who said that's about as safe as you can possibly be. So let's hope there's no COVID. It's a big experiment that we're all trying over here. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, wear your masks, everyone. Be safe.
Yep.
Hopefully we're gonna get through this thing very soon. So, all right, everyone, have a great week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.